When you have a Floyd Rose trem, the fine tuners are a lifesaver when it comes to tuning, but once they are bottomed out or topped out, it can be intimidating to adjust them back to normal. But it's really not all that hard, and I'm going to show you. What is up everyone, Man Bun Melod here. In front of me I have my Warmoth Randy Rhoads V, and most of the fine tuners are bottomed out, so I figured this would be a great time to show you how I reset my fine tuners. Typically I bottom out my fine tuners with the tuner screwed all the way in, but the opposite might be the case for you. Either way, this method will work. First I'm going to go over a little bit of theory. It shouldn't take too long, but if you want to jump right into it, go to that chapter marker. Let's say you just put a fresh set of strings on your guitar. After you first tune your guitar with machine tuners on the headstock, you'll tighten up the locking nut and then do a little bit of fine tuning if necessary. At this point, the string tension between the locking nut and the bridge is the same as the string tension between the locking nut and the machine tuners. Simple enough, right? Now, as you play the guitar, the string properties between the locking nut and the bridge are going to change, but the string properties between the locking nut and the tuners are going to essentially be the same as the day they were put on the guitar. When you loosen the locking nuts, the strings will need to equalize because of the difference in string properties on either side of that locking nut. If you loosen all the locking nuts at the same time, all the strings will equalize, the floating trem will try to compensate for that, and your tuning will be all over the place. At that point, you can reset your fine tuners and tune up the guitar, but it'll take some time. If you find yourself at this point, don't worry, I have a video showing you how to tune a Floyd as quickly as possible. But before you check that video out, you'll definitely want to learn this method so you don't make the mistake again. I already hinted at how we might approach this, but let's go over one more scenario because it'll help us understand why the method works. With a floating trem, if you detune or flatten one string, all the other strings go sharp and vice versa. The system is compensating for this change in string tension. If you tune the string back up to its original pitch, the other strings will flatten back down to their original pitch, again because the system is compensating. You get where I'm going with this? With that bit of information, let me show you how this works. This method works best if your guitar is already in tune. Chances are it's not, like mine, but the method will still save you time. The first thing I will do is unlock one locking nut. This gives two strings a chance to equalize, but leaves the other four strings unaffected. From there, my goal is to get these two strings in tune. Once they are in tune, theoretically, the other four strings should be at the pitch they were at when I unlocked this one nut. Now, as I loosen these nuts, I'm going to remove them just to show you guys which nuts are loose and which nuts are still tight, but you don't have to remove them. Of course, the whole point of this is to reset the fine tuners. I'll start by resetting my low E, or D in my case because the guitar is tuned down one step. I prefer to screw the tuner all the way out, then back in about one turn. I do this because, as you can see, I'm usually tuning the strings up, but turning it in a little gives me a bit of leeway in case I need to tune the string down. Once I'm happy with the fine tuner, I'll tune the string to pitch with the machine tuner, then I'll do the same process with the second string. Once that string is tuned up, it might have affected the pitch of the first string, so I'll go back and forth until those two strings are both relatively in tune. Now that I have two strings in tune, we can check the tuning on all the strings and see they really haven't changed all that much, if at all. Now we'll move on to the second locking nut, leaving that first locking nut unlocked. Theoretically, you can lock it, but it won't affect resetting the other fine tuners since the first two strings have already been equalized. Plus, after all the tuners are reset, I can get the guitar perfectly in tune with the machine tuners before locking those nuts down. Once those two strings are tuned up, you can go back to the first set of strings and tune them, but I don't know that it's completely necessary. Then of course, after the second set of fine tuners are reset, we'll move on to the last locking nut, repeating the process. If you have a 7-string or 8-string guitar, the process will be the same. However, with a 7-string, one of those nuts will have 3 strings, and an 8-string will have a 4th locking nut. Now that I have my fine tuners reset, let's do a check on the tuning. Overall, we're pretty close to being in tune. To finish everything up, I'll go ahead and do a final tuning on the guitar, lock the nuts, and do any fine tuning if necessary. At this point, it is a good idea to tune the guitar in the playing position, but for recording purposes, I'll just leave it on the bench. One more quick tip. On this guitar, when I tighten the locking nut on the 6th string, the string will go a little sharp. The other strings are usually okay. To counteract this, I detune the string before I lock the nut. It's not perfect, but it is easily fixed with a fine tuner. And that's how easy it is to reset your fine tuners. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. But hey, until next time, rock on.